Okay, we're going to start now on the last chapter of the book, chapter 14. So if you'll pull up the PowerPoint and go over that with me, we're going to start on slide 4. So you can't improve what you don't measure. I think that I talked to you a little bit about this in a different chapter and said if I never got on a scale, I would not necessarily know if my diet was working or not working, because I wouldn't know, is my weight going down, is my weight going up, is it staying the same, do I need to adjust, do I need to exercise more, eat less, whatever it may be. If you don't measure something, you can't improve it because you don't know if what you're doing is effective or not. So this chapter is going to talk to us about performance measurement along the supply chain, the entire area. It's a pretty short chapter, and I only gave you a few questions on the test, but I definitely want you to take a look. So if you'll look at slide number 5, understanding the end customer. So the reason that we're going to have these metrics is that it gives us a competitive advantage if we understand our customers. So we understand then what the customer wants, and if we remember, that's kind of part of the definition of what a supply chain is providing what the needs of the customer are at the right time, at the right place. Remember the P's. So we're going to know how often we need to deliver. We're going to need to know how much each client group or customer group is going to want, what their sustainability level, we have to have that every chapter, what the quality that they're willing to pay for and the quality that they want, and what the price that they're willing to pay is. So supply chain strategies on slide 6 are going to talk to you about the supply chain partner requirements. So you have to look at cost, quality, sustainability, and service. So you can have some of these generally, but not all of them. So if you think about if you're going to buy a Jaguar or a Lexus or a Maserati, like some very high-end car, you're going to pay a lot more, but you're getting a much better quality. They may have better service, those kinds of things. So there's always going to be a trade-off. They always say you can pick some combination of these. Before sustainability was in here, it used to always say cost, quality, price instead of service. It would say, cost, quality, service, not sustainability, and it would be pick 2. So you can have something really good quality at a decent price, but you're going to have bad service, or you're going to have great service and a decent price, but the quality may not be good. So things like that. So if you'll move to slide 7, I did not put this on your test, but this is just information about you want to make sure that you're working with suppliers that are auditing their own capabilities, that are allowing you to audit them, and that are making sure that they're constantly trying to improve their process, their quality, their pricing, their service, etc. So if you'll move to slide 8, traditional performance measures. So this is kind of the old school supply chain before all of this became automated and before sustainability became a big issue. And you'll see that that last bullet, financial measures are important. Definitely. Are you giving me price decreases? Are you becoming more efficient with your manufacturing as my supplier so that I can get better pricing from you, etc.? But just financial measures are not enough. So if you'll move on to slide 9, it talks to you a little bit about what those costs can be. So obviously cost, revenue, profit, are you making money, are you selling enough to meet your revenue goals, etc. And it's kind of funny if you look at this first bullet, it says uncontrollable environmental forces. Hello, COVID-19. So let's go to slide 10. So use of performance standards and variances. So if you look at this from a just purely numeric, quantitative viewpoint, it's hard sometimes to come up with the right metrics, because I may say, well, I'm going to set the bar low so that we always achieve it at 100%. Or I may say, well, that actually didn't conform, or it was bad, or we had to rework it or something, but I'm not going to count that because by the time we got it out the door, it was fixed. Things like that. So cooking the books is what they call that. So that not doing good work and then finding a way to make sure that if you're bonused, or if your team is bonused, for example, on the number of parts that come off the end of the production line that are perfect to conformance, if you say, well, I had to bring it back to the line and repaint it 5 times, but by the time it got into a box to go to the customer, it was correct, that's not really good quality. So if you'll move on to slide 11, performance variance is if I say that I'm going to fill this can of Coke, and it needs to have between 11.95 and 12.05 ounces in it to be in conformance. So it can be a half of an ounce plus or minus, or a half of a tenth of an ounce. It doesn't matter, whatever the number is, plus or minus. And every one that goes at that fits in that category is conformant. Performance variance is how many of the ones that came off the line were below that 11.95 or above that 12.05. So you set the variance, you set the spec, and then you say, I'll take a little bit more or a little bit less, and then performance variance is everything outside of that. So if you think about a service business, if I say I run a hair cutting place and I say it should take you 16 minutes to cut someone's hair, and I'll give you plus or minus 2 minutes. So it can take you anywhere from 14 to 18 minutes. So 16 was our standard, 2 minute was our variance plus or minus. So 14 to 18 is our standard. Every haircut that's quicker than 14 minutes or takes longer than 18 minutes is a variance. So that's what this means. This is math on slide 12. You don't need to understand how to do this math. I just want you to understand what this is. Productivity is how much does it take, if you look under the line on the overall productivity formula, how much labor, how much capital, so money, how much energy, and how much material does it take? And then for all of that, how much am I able to generate in revenue? That's how you calculate that. If you're looking at single factor productivity, the bottom formula in orange on slide 12 just says, if I pay you $12 an hour and you generate, let's say our haircut example, I pay you $12 an hour and you generate $36 in haircuts, then your productivity output for single factor would be 3, because it would be 36 divided by 12. So let's look at slide 13. So there's a bunch of ways that you can do this, but they have some problems just like the rest of these measurements have. And you can read what these are, but it definitely, the bottom bullet summarizes it, which is that traditional measures are generally looking at the short term. They're looking at this week, this month, maybe even this quarter, but they're not planning strategically for the long term. And they're certainly not looking at what could we or should we be doing to improve this so that by this time next year, we're more efficient. We're making more money, something like that. There's an example on slide 14. I think it goes through slide 17. You can look at that example. It's not on your test, but take a look at that. So you'll hear the word world class, that phrase, world class. World class basically means you are at the top of your game. So if you have world class performance measures, you're measuring the right things and you're acting on the results. So let's say I'm trying to lose weight. And so every single morning, I get a ruler out and I stretch out my longest piece of hair and I measure it. Okay, and I say, oh, it was 16 inches yesterday and it's 16 and a half inches today. I'm doing great, I'm losing my weight. Losing weight and the length of my hair have nothing to do with each other, right? So you're measuring something and it may be improving or it may be getting worse, but it's not the right measurement because it doesn't have anything to do with what you're trying to accomplish. So a lot of people get into situations where they're either measuring so many things that it's impossible to take action on them, or they're measuring a lot of things and it's the wrong things, or they're measuring all these things, recording all this data, but no one's doing anything with that information. So all three of those are very prevalent problems in corporate America. So we're going to look on slide 20, talks about quality. So the number of defects per unit produced and per unit purchased. So we've talked about this before, and I gave you the example of how a batting average works. It's very similar here. So you're going to look at how many parts did we make or how many parts did we sell. You can do it either way. And how many parts were defective. So a company like Apple is tracking, millions and millions and millions of cell phones that they've sold. How many of those were defective? When you go into an Apple store, you call Apple support or you send a phone back or something like that, they're very meticulously recording whether the phone itself was defective or whether the user didn't know how to get what they needed from the phone and that's why they were asking for help. Those are very different things. If I don't understand how to do something and I call for help and then they're able to help me fix it, that is maybe a user interface problem, or maybe that is a better education, better training, make more information available on the website so people can figure it out for themselves. But it doesn't mean that the chip inside the phone was defective. It doesn't mean that the camera stopped working or the microphone stopped working. It means that somebody didn't understand something. It's not a defective part. It may now cause a defect action in that somebody who designs the user interface is going to try to make it easier to use so that in future models it won't be so difficult, but it's not a defect. So number of product returns, number of warranty claims, all these kinds of things are things that you can look at. You can also look at slide 21, talks about the world-class performance measures around cost. So how much am I having to throw away because I could not manufacture it properly? So I started to manufacture a phone. I went to finally put it together and the screen cracked. Well, was that because the screen was defective, or was that because I didn't know how to assemble it properly and I broke it? So all those kinds of things are tracked. If you'll look on slide 22, those are all performance measures for customer service. I don't think any of those will surprise you, but flexibility, dependability, and innovation are very important when it comes to customer service. If you look at slide 23, the most important thing that to have a world-class performance measurement system is that it has to link the trading partners in your supply chain ecosystem. So if you think all the way back to the beginning of the semester, chapter 1, we had that drawing that you had to label on your first exam. If you think about everybody in that whole ecosystem, everybody's got to be driving toward the same goal. Everybody's got to be saying, what are we doing to make our end user, our end customer, happy? What do we need to do from our standpoint, whether we're driving the truck, whether we're manufacturing the screen on the phone, whether we're, making the shampoo or washing the hair in the haircut plate? It doesn't matter what we're doing. Everybody needs to be driving toward those same goals. And everybody should agree, this is what we're going to measure, this is what we're going to count as the spec, and this is what we're going to do to improve it if we notice that we're having trouble. If you look on slide 24, we have our obligatory environmental sustainability slide, and it's just talking about some things that you can measure here, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I did think I put that on your test. Also, you'll see GSCM is green supply chain management. You may also see sometimes that's the abbreviation for global supply chain management. So you need to kind of look at context to see what that G is standing for. And then you've all probably heard about carbon footprint. So reducing carbon footprint and making sure that total carbon emissions are reduced in the manufacturing process, the delivery process, etc. Making your routes as direct as possible so that you're not crisscrossing back and forth and wasting gas and polluting the environment more. On slide 25, so some supply chain metrics that people often use are these 4 in orange. I think these are on your exam. Cash to cash, I want to explain to you. The rest of them you should be able to understand, but cash to cash is the average number of days between the time that I buy the material and by the time I get paid. So let's say I run a bakery. Cash to cash is how long from the day that I order and pay for the flour until I've used all the flour and gotten paid by my end customer for a finished cake. So it's the time that you lay out the cash for the raw material until you get the cash back from the person that purchases the finished good. So cash to cash is very, very important. The shorter that time is, the better your business generally is, because you're not floating millions and millions of dollars where you're paying for something before they pay you. All right, so you'll look at slide 26. So perfect order. Lots of people measure perfect order different ways. If you place an order with me today and I tell you that I can ship it on May 15th and you say, well, I wanted it on May 10th. A lot of companies, if I say I ship it on May 15th, they count that as a perfect order because it was on time, complete, and undamaged. Some companies don't. Some companies say the customer wanted it on May 10th. I didn't commit to that. And if I get it done by May 15th, it was still late because it's the customer's due date, not the date I committed to. I don't know if I told you the story in this class about my Amazon order that came with the Tide Pods that were completely exploded and had covered every single thing in my Amazon order with detergent from inside one of those Tide Pods. And so it arrived on time and it was complete, but it was not undamaged. So that is not a perfect order. Supply chain e-business performance, your second bullet here on slide 26, is talking about the average number of electronic orders compared to all the orders that you place. So if you think about, like, if you're an airline, how many calls did you have to take on the phone to get the reservation versus how many did people just make on their own on the website or on the app, and it didn't require any intervention from an employee of your company? That's how you figure out each e-business performance in the supply chain. And then environmental, I did not put this on your test, but this is the number of supply chain partners you have that have ISO 14000 certification or other achievement of other carbon emission goals or things like that. On slide 27, we've talked about balanced scorecarding before, but Kaplan and Norton created the balanced scorecard to make sure that we could figure out how to score our suppliers. So we're looking at financial, internal business process, customer perspective, and then learning and growth. And we also call this process scorecarding, and I did put this on your test. We've looked at balanced scorecard before, but this is an example of one on slide 29, or 28, I'm sorry. 29, you can also put this into a dashboard. This is on your test. The word that I'm looking for in the answer is dashboard. And if you look at slide 30, we've talked before about plan, source, make, deliver. That's the SCORE model from the Supply Chain Council. And the SCORE model is now expanded to return and enable. So enable is generally that customer service, customer fulfillment kind of group on slide 30. And on slide 31, there's a depiction of how that works. And on slide 32 and 33, there is information about how to use that score-based benchmarking. That is the last lecture for the semester. Please use your study guide, get ready for the test, and call me if you have any questions. Have a great week. Bye.